What would you do if you found your own missing poster nailed to a tree and you were never reported missing? It was just past 6:30 p.m. when the last daylight filtered through the pine canopy, casting long shadows across the forest floor. You could hear the distant hum of cicadas rising, the brittle crunch of dead leaves beneath worn boots, and the low rustle of branches shifting in the wind. Ella Raymond had only come out here to clear her head. That's all it was supposed to be. She wasn't running. She wasn't lost. But something about that path, that narrow, crooked trail she didn't remember ever seeing before, pulled at her like a thread from the inside. Her breath caught. The air felt colder here, denser. She thought maybe it was just the weather, until she saw it. One single paper, nailed to a splintering trunk. Edges curled, water-stained, half-torn. The face staring back at her wasn't unfamiliar. It was her own. Her name, her photo, her age. Missing, last seen June 3rd. But today was June 12th, and no one had ever reported her missing. She stepped back. The wind shifted. The poster fluttered slightly, like it was breathing. Her pulse slammed against her throat. It wasn't just the poster. It was the handwriting scrawled at the bottom, not official, not typed, not police-issued. Time's running out. That's when the silence broke. A twig snapped behind her, sharp, deliberate. Ella didn't turn around. She couldn't. Her legs felt cemented into the soil, her breath too loud in her ears. The air smelled like damp leaves and rusted metal. Her fingers trembled against her jacket zipper. Every sound felt exaggerated now. The whisper of wind through the needles, the creak of an unseen branch. She wasn't alone. But more than that, she wasn't sure anymore if she had ever left these woods. Because the poster, the photo, she didn't remember it being taken. And that face, the one on the paper, it didn't look afraid. It looked like it had given up. She walked into the woods looking for quiet. But what she found was a version of herself no one was supposed to see. And someone had already been watching. What if the moment your life started falling apart didn't look like anything at all? There were no fights, no signs of distress, no slamming doors or whispered warnings. In the days before she found the poster, Ella Raymond's life looked perfectly intact on the outside. If anyone had been watching closely, they'd see a 19-year-old girl going about her week like every other one before it. She commuted to her classes at Northfield Community College. English comp on Mondays, intro psych on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She had a part-time job at a bakery off Route 21. Clocked in at 7 a.m., clocked out by 2. According to time cards and camera footage, she never missed a shift. She called her brother Caleb that Sunday, just to remind him to feed the dog while she worked the early open. The call lasted less than a minute. Nothing in her voice sounded off. But this is where things start to get strange. She was never reported missing. But someone made that poster, printed it, aged it, and left it in the woods, with the exact date and time she was supposed to disappear. And none of that matched reality. Tuesday morning, she left her apartment at 7:15 a.m. Her neighbor, Mrs. Harlow, saw her lock the door and wave before getting into her car. At 7:29 a.m., traffic cam footage caught her car turning eastbound on Cumberland Avenue. At 7:42 a.m., she texted Maren, her closest friend since high school, asking if she wanted to hang out that weekend. Maren replied, "Friday night movie?" No response. Ella never texted back. But her phone stayed active, pinged 4 towers that day. It connected to her home Wi-Fi at 3:08 p.m. A witness, the neighbor again, claimed they saw her pull back into her driveway just after 3 o'clock. No one saw her again after that. No one realized she'd stopped answering texts, calls, DMs, because she still looked active. Bills were paid. Socials weren't deleted. The world kept going. But inside her apartment, the signs were different. When her brother stopped by 2 days later, her car was still there. Front door locked. Lights off. He knocked. No answer. He assumed she was out. Maybe at class. Maybe at work. But that wasn't the part that haunted him. It was what he saw through the window. A cup of coffee still sitting on the table. A half-eaten bagel next to an open laptop. The kind of scene you walk away from thinking you'll be right back. but no one ever found a record of her going anywhere after that moment. Maren would later say she noticed changes weeks before. Little ones. Ella started double-locking her car. She'd leave class early. Once, she asked Maren if she ever felt like someone was following her. Maren laughed it off. Ella did too. But when she pressed again, like, not just a stranger, but someone who already knows what you're going to do next? Maren said she'd never heard her say anything like that before. Ella didn't have a history of mental illness. She had never gone missing before. She had no stalker on record. No break-ins. No known enemies. No obvious motive. Nothing to suggest danger until that poster surfaced. It's almost like someone wanted her to believe she was already gone. They weren't waiting for her to vanish. They were waiting for her to find out she already had. How many times can you miss the warning signs before it becomes your biggest regret? When someone disappears without technically being gone, no one calls the police. No one organizes search teams. No one starts posting on social media or printing flyers. Because the routine keeps moving. Calls still ring. Devices still ping. And the people closest to her, they all had a reason not to panic. Until the moment they couldn't explain the silence anymore. She wasn't in danger. That's what they all thought. Because her car was parked. Her phone was on. Her keys were inside. She was still here. But something had already left. The first person who noticed something felt off was the person who saw her almost every day. A friend who never had to question where she was or if she was okay. They had a rhythm. Shared playlists, late-night voice notes, grocery runs, inside jokes that didn't need full sentences. But that week, the replies stopped. Not immediately. Slowly. A missed call here. A seen but not answered message there. And when they spoke briefly, she sounded different. Not panicked. Not scared. Just thinner. Like something inside her was pulling back from the world. She told them she was just tired. Said she needed space. Didn't explain what for. But looking back, it wasn't space she was creating. It was distance. Phone records showed limited outgoing calls after that. No streaming activity. No location history for almost 48 hours. Her banking activity stopped too. No debit card use. No online orders. No ATM withdrawals. It was like she hit pause on her life without telling anyone. Except, someone else was watching. Because the missing poster didn't just show up out of nowhere. The paper was professionally printed. Laser cut. No fingerprints. But it didn't match any known flyer template from law enforcement or national missing persons databases. The photo on the flyer? It wasn't pulled from social media. It was taken from an angle no one could trace. Not a selfie. Not a family photo. It looked like a still frame. From a camera that was never supposed to exist. In the days that followed, the people around her began circling the same question. Why didn't I check sooner? One person had gone through her trash, hoping for clues. One knocked on her door 6 times before giving up. One stood in her driveway, phone in hand, for almost 20 minutes. Unsure if calling the police would make her angry or save her. Because it's not easy to explain what's wrong when nothing is technically wrong. But she hadn't shown up to class. She skipped her shift. She never confirmed the Friday night plans she'd asked for. And the silence was finally louder than any explanation. The day before the poster appeared, someone saw movement near the tree line. They assumed it was a jogger. No one followed up. Later that night, a car engine was heard idling near the edge of the trail. No one checked the plates. At 3:17 a.m., a neighbor's dog wouldn't stop barking. But when they looked outside, no one was there. By morning, the poster was nailed up. And by then, the person it warned about had already seen it. No one reported her missing. Because the people who loved her didn't realize someone else had already claimed she was. If the last time you saw someone didn't look like the last time, would you even notice? That's what makes these cases so hard. When someone doesn't scream, doesn't run, doesn't fight. When the moment they disappear looks exactly like every other moment, quiet, routine, normal. You don't catch it while it's happening. You only see it when you rewind the footage and notice what's missing. Her footsteps were captured on a grocery store camera. She scanned the same snack she always bought. She smiled at the cashier. But the timestamp on the receipt didn't match her phone. And she never made it to her car. CCTV footage showed her entering a small corner store around 2:57 p.m. It was a Wednesday. She walked straight to the refrigerated section, grabbed the same bottled tea she always did, then browsed the back aisle for just under 90 seconds. She looked calm, focused. No one followed her in. No one stood too close. She used her debit card at checkout. Transaction approved at 2:59 p.m. The store owner, later interviewed, said she didn't say much, just thanks and a quick nod. No distress, no hesitation. But this is where it starts to fall apart. The car she drove, a silver compact sedan, was parked across the street, according to nearby traffic footage. But she never appears on the exterior camera again. Not walking out, not crossing the street, nothing. The outdoor security feed glitched from 3:01 p.m. to 3:04 p.m. The store claimed it was a typical signal dropout. But the tech inspection later found signs of manual interference. Someone had tampered with the angle. Cables had been pulled slightly loose, not enough to kill the feed entirely, but just enough to obscure the exact spot where her car had been parked. 3 minutes. That's all it took. And no one saw where she went. When the police reviewed the indoor footage frame by frame, they noticed something subtle and chilling. When she entered the store, she carried a canvas tote bag on her left shoulder. When she left the counter, it was gone. No one saw her drop it. No one picked it up. It didn't appear behind her on shelves or on the floor. The clerk didn't recall her holding anything as she exited. And yet the receipt showed 3 items purchased. Only one was visible in her hand. So where were the other 2? And what happened between checkout and that broken feed? In the week prior, data pulled from her phone showed something else. She had taken a walk into that same forest trail twice. Once in the early morning, once just after sunset. No fitness app, no photo logs, no text sent during either walk. Just location pings, ending abruptly both times. The signal would drop, then reappear 40 minutes later back at home. It was like someone was testing how long she could disappear without setting off alarms. In the following days, people close to her began to compare notes. She had been avoiding group chats, canceled lunch with a coworker, didn't attend the study group she created. One friend said she seemed disconnected. Another said she was just less bright. Not sad, not angry, just like she was shrinking, as if she knew something the rest of them didn't. Or maybe someone made sure she couldn't say it. The missing poster was dated 2 days after the store visit. But it looked aged, damp corners, sun-stained ink. Tests showed it had been exposed to the elements for at least a week. That would mean the poster was created before the last sighting, before the purchase, before the missing tote, before the camera glitch. So who made it, and why did they know something no one else did? She walked into the store like she still had time, but someone else had already started the countdown. What do you do when the thing you feared most, the thing you've been desperately trying to survive, turns around and tells you it knew you were coming? What do you do when you realize you were never running away, you were being led? The forest was unnervingly still that afternoon. Not the kind of calm that soothes you, the kind that tells you something's watching. The leaves barely moved. No birds, no breeze, just the sound of her own shoes crunching the brittle undergrowth. Each step deeper into the woods felt heavier, not with exhaustion, but with dread. The kind that coils in your stomach and whispers, "Turn back." She hadn't told anyone where she was going. The strange number had texted her an address. No name, just, "You want answers? Come alone." No cops. She told herself it was probably a prank. A cruel one. But something about that message, it didn't feel like a stranger. It felt personal. Familiar. Her phone had lost signal 3 minutes after turning onto the dirt path. Still, she followed. Half out of desperation. Half out of rage. She'd spent weeks trying to figure out why her face was on that poster. Missing female, early 20s. Last seen wearing a gray hoodie and jeans. Same face. Same clothes. Except She wasn't missing. She was right here, alive, breathing. But something about the photo, it wasn't one she remembered ever taking. It wasn't from her phone. And the background, it was these woods, right where she stood now. Her chest burned as she climbed over a fallen log. There were shoe prints in the soil fresh, but they didn't come from the direction she had. They came from deeper in, and stopped about 15 feet away, near a tree with something stapled to it. Another poster. She moved slowly. Her breath caught when she reached it. It was the same photo, same one from before, same clothing, same haunting text below it. Last seen here, except this time, there was a new line added, written in thick red ink across the bottom. You're late. Her legs locked. The skin on her neck crawled. Something cracked behind her. Not a squirrel. Not a branch. A deliberate footstep. She turned quickly. Nothing. But the woods didn't feel empty anymore. They felt like they were holding their breath. That's when she heard it. Faint click. Like a shudder. She turned toward the sound just in time to see a glint between the trees' metal. A camera lens. Someone was watching her. And they'd just taken her photo. Again. But why? What were they documenting? And most chilling of all, why did it feel like this had happened before? And she'd just forgotten. She ran. Not just to escape, but because she was starting to wonder, what if she really was missing? And she just didn't know it yet. What if the truth isn't that you're being watched, but that you've always been watched? And worse, that others were here before you. Same woods, same poster, same look of confusion on their faces. But their stories didn't make it out. She didn't remember how long she ran, only that her legs moved before her brain caught up. Branches clawed at her arms. Her lungs were fire. That sickening click of the camera still echoed in her head. She didn't scream. What was the point? No one answered last time. When she finally stumbled back into cell range, her hands shook as she called the only person she trusted, a cousin who worked part-time with local law enforcement. Not a full officer, but enough to access things most people couldn't. She didn't even explain the whole thing. Just the poster, the woods, the photo, and that someone out there had already known she'd be there. He didn't argue, didn't say she sounded paranoid. He just said, "Get somewhere safe. I'll check what I can." 2 hours later, he called back. But it wasn't reassurance in his voice. It was fear. "I pulled some traffic cam data near the trailhead you mentioned. Lisa, you're not going to believe what I found." He sent the file. It was her, pulling into the lot, getting out of the car, entering the woods. But the timestamp, it was dated 3 days ago. Not today. 3 days ago. She stared at it, heart thundering. "I thought maybe the camera was wrong. But then I dug deeper." He sent another folder. Inside were dozens of stills, all grainy, dark, pulled from older trail cams. Some from as far back as 2017. The same area. Same narrow path into the forest. But different people. Always alone. Always looking over their shoulder. All women. All around her age. Every single one of them was listed in missing person databases. Some with posters eerily similar to hers. And some had photos that looked like they were taken right from the woods she had just escaped. "Lisa, I don't know how to say this, but it looks like whoever took that picture of you, they've done this before." Her knees buckled as she scrolled. These weren't just coincidences. The same trees, the same trail, even the same positioning in some of the photos. Like someone was creating a pattern. Like this was a routine. These girls didn't wander off. They were lured. And she had almost joined them. What chilled her deeper was what her cousin said next. "There's a folder inside the police server that's locked. It says, witness file sealed. It was last updated 6 months ago. But no one ever talks about it." And one of the names listed was found wandering out of the woods, with no memory of how she got there. She felt like vomiting, because suddenly the camera click didn't feel random. It felt ritualistic. Like the photos were meant to replace the people. And the most terrifying question wasn't just, who's doing this? It was, How many more posters are already printed, just waiting to be stapled to that tree? And is one of them still of her? What if the moment you realized you were missing was the moment you stopped feeling real? The forest didn't move. It stood in a silence so dense it felt like it was listening to her confusion, her ragged breath, the weight of something unspeakable pressing into her chest. And in that frozen moment, she looked down again. The paper was still there. Her face was still staring back at her. Name, unknown. Status, missing. Last seen, near this very path. Details, silent. Alone, afraid. She hadn't just stumbled onto a flyer. She had stumbled onto herself. And the most chilling part? No one had reported her missing. No one had filed this. No one was looking for her, which meant someone had created it, but not to find her. To remind her she was already gone. The edges of the flyer were damp, smudged, like it had been rained on more than once, like it had been left there, over and over again, maybe even replaced, a fresh one, every time she got close to leaving, as if someone knew. And that's when she turned around, not because she heard a sound, not because someone whispered her name, but because the trees felt different, too still, too knowing. And behind her, just beyond the thick wall of trees, was a figure, still, watching. She couldn't see their face, but they held something in their hand. Another flyer. Her legs didn't move. Her voice didn't rise. All she could do was look down at her own face on the paper and realize this wasn't a story of a girl trying to escape. This was a story of a girl who was never meant to be found. The deeper horror wasn't that she was lost. It was that she might have always been forgotten. And as the forest swallowed the last of the light, something inside her broke. Not in panic, not in fear, but in truth. Because somewhere along the way, she stopped asking who she was and started wondering what she was. Subscribe to the Veil of Secret for more real-time, chilling true crime stories that twist, grip, and haunt. Because some stories don't need monsters to be terrifying. Just silence.